Hey everybody, it is a beautiful evening here in County Tipperary, Ireland, and I thought this is the perfect time for me to take you on just a little stroll down our road. And just as I thought of it, I looked out and there's a rainbow right out there. And hey, what can we say? I'm in Ireland. What else will we have? And I thought as I'm going, I'm just going to make sure and take some photos of some of the different plants that are growing here. It's October, late October, but Ireland has a much milder climate than we do in northern Michigan. So their season, they don't get that hard winter. And so therefore they don't also get that big winter shutdown that we get where everything, just looks kind of dormant and dead. And then we have that rejuvenation in the spring. They do have kind of a shutdown or plants that go dormant, but it's much different than what we have. So it's just such a beautiful night. I just thought I got to show, and I got to share this with you. So here goes. I'll start at one end of our road, and this part is known for the beech trees that are planted just along the high side of the road. And these trees have been there for a long time. Liam's cousin, who's in his 80s, said he doesn't remember a time when those beech trees weren't there. So they've been there forever. They do a nice little kind of tunnel canopy over the road. They're absolutely stunning. If you look right down the road under the beech trees, you'll see the silhouette of Keeper Hill. And Keeper Hill is kind of a landmark in the area. It's one of the highest points in County Tipperary. Keeper's also kind of known for wearing its cap. So on a foggy day, a lot of times the fog starts at the top of Keeper and it looks like it's wearing a hat. Or in the wintertime, if it's snowing, a lot of times there's snow at the top of Keeper, but then there's not snow farther down. So people will say Keeper's wearing his cap. Now this white plant you might recognize, it's yarrow or achillea, and this is one that grows really well by us. It's known for being drought tolerant, can handle poor soil. Well, here in Ireland they don't have a drought issue, that's for sure, but because it's planted up on the hedgerow, it gets proper drainage, and it doesn't matter what kind of soil is in the hedgerow, it really just does well. It's an easy one to grow both here in Ireland and back homes. This other one, this yellow one, this is a ragweed. This is another one that would commonly grow in Michigan. I've heard the locals here refer to this as bougladon, and bougladon has kind of a bad reputation because it is highly toxic to animals. And the good news is that the animals pretty much know that, and when it's growing out in the field or out in the pasture, no animal ever touches it. However, if you have it in a hay field and it gets kind of cut with the hay and gets mixed in, an animal could accidentally eat some bougladon, and that can be pretty bad. So a lot of people here, remember when they were a kid having to go out in the field and pick bougladon and make sure that it was out of the field. This next one is here specifically for that fall foliage. Look at that beautiful red color. This is a common bramble, which is kind of a wild blackberry. The thing about this is that it is got really, really vicious thorns. It will tear your skin apart, it will tear your clothes apart, but in the fall, it does get this great color. So that's the one advantage to it. Otherwise, it's kind of an invasive, really aggressive plant that we don't like. But in this situation, boy, you can't beat the color. This yellow flower here is very common in Ireland as well. It's called furze, other people call it gorse, and in the springtime it usually has its big flush of yellow flowers, but it often gets a second smaller flush right around October, so you get to enjoy it. The color of these plants are just beautiful, but this is another one that's really prickly and really, sticky and thorny, but really, really a nice kind of addition. It's not something that people usually put in their garden. It just kind of grows wild on the hillside or in the hedgerows, so it's one that you get to enjoy from a distance more so than right up in the garden. Ferns are another plant that do really well in Ireland. They don't get a lot of sun, and ferns usually don't like full sun, so they do well. You can tell they just fill in really nice. These are kind of coming to an end, so they're going to turn brown pretty soon, die back, and then come back in the spring. But they're just really beautiful on the side of the road. This here is the flower of a giant hogweed, and it looks a lot like a Queen Anne's lace, but it's a different type of plant. It gets a really strong, tall stem. They can be taller than I am. Their flowers can be bigger than my head, so they're quite impressive, but they're not something that people really want around, partly because I think they're toxic. Also, the sap or the oil in the plant makes your skin photosensitive. So if you get that sap on your hands or on your arms, and then you go out in the sun, it can really cause blistering and really some serious effects. So not a favorite plant, but it is pretty impressive, especially when you're looking at, kind of these spent seed heads. And These here are just some rose hips. Someone at some point must have planted a rose in this hedgerow, and so every year we get these pink flowers during the summer, and then the rose hips are just really pretty. So it just kind of shows how resilient some types of roses are. This rose in particular can grow just amongst the weeds and do really well with nobody even paying attention to it. Here's a plant I don't know that well because I don't normally see it, so I don't know if it's just a late bloomer and it just blooms when I'm not around, or if it just gets overshadowed by other plants, but I think it's called Starwort, and I think it has some herbal properties, but otherwise it just has this nice little white flower, almost like a bit of a mossy leaf, kind of grows just in the hedgerow, just a nice little addition. This here is a fuchsia, and what you might not realize about fuchsia in Ireland is they grow like shrubs, so they become full shrubs, and people will go through, you know, every fall and just hack them right back down to the ground, and they come, you know, back, and they do really well here, whereas we tend to picture our fuchsia as just these things for hanging baskets. They can, you know, they definitely don't go through the winter. Here they're actually you know, this beautiful shrub with these beautiful flowers. This is my neighbor's hydrangea, and one thing I have to say is, like, macrophylla hydrangeas and probably some of the mountain hydrangeas do really well in Ireland. You know, once they get established, they tend to need no attention whatsoever, and it's just really nice because in northern Michigan, macrophyllas tend to be a lot harder to grow, or at least it's harder to get them to flower because of our hard winters. But in Ireland, man, those things just look great right through, like, the freeze. Once it freezes, then they start looking bad, but up until then, they look great, and people do nothing with them. I know so many people who have them, they don't even fertilize them, they don't do anything, and they just kind of keep going and going and going. Had some mushrooms growing down by our neighbor's house, so I took a picture of that one. This plant looks a lot like the wild ginger that grows by us, so I kind of looked into it, and it probably is the European cousin, and the European cousin isn't quite as hardy as our Canadian wild ginger or North American wild ginger, but the leaves are very similar, and one of the notable differences is that the European version, wherever it grows, tends to be evergreen, whereas ours definitely dies back in the winter. So this kind of coverage is just a nice little filler in a nice kind of shady area just down the road from us. So I like showing that one. This plant puts on such a beautiful display right now. It was covered in flowers, and as far as I know, it's a type of vinca because the leaves look like vinca, the flowers look like vinca, but this one was growing a little bit more upright than what I'm used to. I'm used to vinca really being a big trailing plant, but this one was growing very nice and upright and full, so this is a plant that I would love to add to the garden, and it just had so many flowers on it. It was gorgeous. A lot of times people refer to this also as periwinkle or myrtle, so it just looked really great. I also spotted some wild geraniums, at least I think that's what those are, and so you can see they get those nice pink flowers and kind of fill in. That's just kind of growing in the hedgerow wild, so nothing special about it, but I still like it. This one I think is a vetch. I'm not totally sure. I recognize the leaves growing kind of all over the place, but I don't usually get to see the flowers, but this time I did. So, you know, when I spotted that, I think that's what it is. It's not a plant I'm very familiar with. Now this plant with the beautiful red berries, this is one that you're probably familiar with. It's the common barberry, and barberry is one of those plants. It's best known for the one with the burgundy leaves. So it's a foliage plant, but it's even more known for those awful thorns that it has. It's the picky bush that people put in their yard. Oftentimes they put it under windows because it kind of adds a little extra security to keep people and animals away from that area. These berries are edible and they taste really quite nice. They're a little bit like a cranberry, so they're very tart. But because they're edible means that the birds love them as well. And so this plant in different parts of North America is banned because the birds will eat the fruit and then drop the seeds all over the place and it becomes invasive. So it is not banned in Michigan, but it is banned in many US states. There are new varieties coming out that are sterile, so that's becoming less and less of a problem. So if you're looking at getting that traditional burgundy color, you can always look for the sterile varieties, but if you want some of the more unique colors like the limes and the greens and the oranges, I don't know that they have the sterile varieties of those yet, but they are working on them. So just keep that in mind if you're going to put these in, that there is some risk that this could be an invasive plant, and it's not invasive because it grows like crazy, it's invasive because it reseeds, and usually it's reseeding someplace far away from where you are, so you're not able to monitor it.